The Highgate Vampire. Dave Eddie Brown stepped inside from the warm summer night into the hall of a dilapidated but once impressive three-story house in Highgate. It wasn't quite a commune. It wasn't as organized as that. The inhabitants were colorful. There were various free spirits there, and people kept coming and going. Poets, dancers, writers, electricians, and people who had completely dropped out of the rat race to take drugs in the upstairs rooms. Eddie didn't take many drugs, just a bit of weed to relax him now and again. He avoided alcohol, like the plague he saw. What it had done to his dad, the odd tab of acid, but that was just recreation. Everyone in his circle did it. As for what he did for a living, well, he didn't really do anything. He tried some expressionist painting, but he was crap at it. Couldn't play the guitar. Maybe he'd try the drums one day if he could get a drum kit, but something would turn up. Some talent would reveal itself, and it was only 1972, and he was on the dole. You could live like that. Then Eddie had been there at that big house for 3 months prior to that. He was at another squat in Hackney, but he preferred Highgate, and he got in there because he'd known a bloke who told him about the squad. That bloke Michael was long gone. Now he'd headed off to Marrakesh with his girlfriend, but it was all okay. Life was good. Eddie read comics a lot, mainly Thor, but inevitably some Superman. He had his own room, but there was a communal room with a gramophone that he also frequented right now. Eddie relaxed with a roll. He laced with herbal green and bathed in the entertaining beats of Led Zeppelin 3. The night was warm. He'd had a free meal from Denise, and he had nothing in particular on his mind. There were a couple of others in the room. They came and went. The only one who stayed and tried to make conversation was Ray. Ray was new to the squat, and the killing thing about him was that he was an albino. His hair was as white as the Milky Bar kids, his face as pale as talcum powder, and his eyes as pink as the White Rabbits. Even his eyelashes were white. Eddie's shivered all over. When the live version of Smoke on the Water pumped out of the record player, somebody spoke hello. Eddie was listening to the lyrics and singing along. We all came out to Mantra on the lake. Geneva's shoreline realized. Someone had changed the record without him noticing and wondered who did it. He didn't mind. He was very easygoing. Live and let live. It had been Piper at the gates of dawn. He wasn't complaining. He never complained. That's why they called him Eddie. Hello. Someone was definitely calling him. The voice came again. Hello, mate Eddie, isn't it? The sound of his name finally summoned him back from a rolling riding world of bass and guitar and drums. Eddie sailed in from a smooth world of mellow to the writhing smoke of the communal room, where it smelled of cannabis and patchouli oil. His head was foggy as he smiled at Ray, the albino. Hey man, what's happening? Ray smiled with his pale pink lips, his pink eyes with surrounding white lashes like paintbrushes looked deep into smileless, befuddled brown ones. Eddie's head felt smoky. Pleased to meet you, mate. I'm Eddie. I'm Ray. You've been here long here. Where's here, man? The Planet High Gang. Eddie shrugged and took another talk of the reefer and said, I sailed in. And one day, I'm gonna sail out again. I want to have some fun. Lionel said, looking calm and cold and white as a skinny, washed-out coffin worm brought to the surface by heavy rain. Eddie grinned. Fun is my middle name, and my first name and my last name are... Ray laughed. I thought they called you Eddie. Fanboys. Always smiling. Eddie said. He sat forward anyway. What's this about fun? You heard of the Highgate Vampire? Ray said. Eddie wasn't sure. He coughed. Yeah, I think it's in Highgate Cemetery. I heard something. Eddie took a deep drag, paused while it hit him, and said, Kinda hat drinks blood. That's him thought. I heard something, Ray said. Me and a friend are going there tonight. Smiling, nodded Lovely. Evening for it. The weather's been fantastic. It'll be dark, sure. Essential for vampires, I guess, Ray said. We're going to do an exorcism smile, or blinked really, or 4 to get rid of the vampire. Eddie tilted his head. You want to get rid of it? Of course it kills people, really kills people. That's uncool. Shouldn't do that. Do you want to come me? Yeah. To kill a vampire to exorcise it? Drive it away. Eddie shrugged. Well, my friend Selena will be there. That piqued his interest. She sounded like a girl. Eddie liked girls. He was good with them, he said. Is she pretty? Ray laughed. Stunning, Eddie rubbed his dreamy eyes. Yeah, okay then. Night fell. The air was warm and sweet and scented with night-scented stalks and jasmine and honeysuckle from the rambling garden of the big house they were squatting in. Eddie got something to eat, looking out for Ray but not seeing him. And grateful for that, he went back to his room. Eddie was now level-headed, dope-free, and regretting saying he'd go wandering around a graveyard in the dark. Still, there was this Selena supposedly pretty. But the question was she pretty enough to scare himself shitless? The hours ticked by on the gold wristwatch he'd inherited from his grandfather, the only classy item he owned, and Ray's knock never came. And Eddie breathed a sigh of relief. He had the window open because the weather was so warm, and he heard the Highgate clocks chime midnight time for another smoke. He felt mellow. This was his thing. He stayed up late and rose later, so midnight was early for Eddie. Ray opened Eddie's door without knocking, just as he was lighting up. You ready? Smile afroze. The albino's face was haunting an electric light. It turned out Eddie found Ray even weirder when he was sober. Eddie shrugged, palms up in a gesture of peace. Now, I'm not sure, man. I've got stuff to do, really. Then it sounded unconvinced. Sure, I've got a book about meditation. I was going to read Simon Indian Guru wrote it. Ray smiled sardonically, or are you just chicken scared? Smile, a jerky thumb back to indicate himself with a wide-eyed look on his face that suggested Ray's words were the dumbest thing ever said by anyone, anywhere me scared. Yeah, you? Eddie laughed. Now, of course not. I've just got this book. The book will wait. Come and meet Selena. You'll like her unless you're a coward. That gave Smile a pause, though he was a free spirit and all that, and didn't mind being called dirty and work shy, because people who said that were all slaves to the rat race. But being thought a coward didn't sit easy with him. But Ray, come on. Selena will meet us there. Eddie exhaled deeply without much enthusiasm. He followed Ray down the stairs and out the front door along the garden path between rose bushes running wild, and then out through a wrought iron gateway twined with honeysuckle and ivy, until they emerged onto the street, a short walk from the squat, and they were at the top of Swain's Lane. This steep, narrow lane led to the graveyard, flanked by high walls like a sunken ceremonial route to hell. Eddie threw his head back. It was such a lovely night. The moon was up, big and yellow, and she smiled down on them, casting ink-black shadows where she didn't reach and washes of white ivory, where she did black and white like a chessboard. They walked amid scents of damp willows, dreaming oaks, and resinous yews. Smiling knew, because he was not an ignorant man, that Highgate Cemetery was built in the 1830s and filled with us overdone funeral monuments, which had gone to rotten ruin since the company ran out of money. In the 1960s, no one officially entered the cemetery now, and the tombs and pathways were overgrown and home to foxes and owls. Tonight, flitting bats and apparently to vampires. We'll go in the north gate, Lynette said. It's quieter. We'll have to climb over the gate, though. Where's your girlfriend? Eddie said. She's not my girlfriend, just a friend. And she said she'd meet us here. It was a lovely night, but the thought of breaking into a graveyard unnerved Eddie a little. He said, no sign of her yet. Want to wait here? No, let's just go in. She can meet up with us in there. Oh, Eddie said, scratching the back of one hand with another. I'd rather wait for her out here. Ray's pallid face gleamed sweaty and white in the pellucid moonlight. Come on, you house. And with that, Ray mounted the gate and vaulted the top of the chained-up gateway. Eddie heard a soft thump as Ray landed in the piled-up leaf mulch on the other side. Eddie swallowed hard on reflection. He really didn't want to be doing this. Come on, Ray hissed impatiently out of sight. He could slink back to the squat, but then Ray would tell everyone he was yellow. Smile aside, he was dying for a smoke and he didn't have any. Come on. Selena's waiting, Ray hissed. Eddie shrugged. Maybe he would get something out of this. They might have some cigarettes. Then there was the so far unseen Selena that cheered him up. Girls liked him. They said he was vulnerable and charming. He played up to that all the time, with good results, resignedly. He climbed and dropped into the darkness behind the padlocked gate. It was Bible black here under the cover of confused and interlocking trees. The undergrowth grew thick, and bindweed and ivy fingers entwined above his head. Blocking out the creamy moon, his feet sank in the damp mulch. The smell of woodlands assailed his nostrils. He couldn't see Ray here. The albino whispered, I'm here. Eddie couldn't make out much in the gloom, but the sound came from further up the path as he set off an owl called further into the cemetery like a guard announcing their arrival. Eddie hurried up after Ray. Ray seemed to know where he was going. They walked fast along trails that ran between overdone Victorian tombs. Sometimes Ray would hesitate as if unsure and then grunt and go on smile, had to hurry to catch up. Then they came to a crossroads. The trees didn't reach here, and the white moon sailed high overhead. For the first time since they entered Highgate Cemetery, Eddie could see Ray's strange, pale face. For the first time now, he was standing still. Breathing lightly, he realized how scared he was. He bit his lip. What the hell was he doing in the middle of Highgate Cemetery at midnight with some bloke he didn't know? Eddie's heart thumped gently in his chest. His palms were sweaty. What now, he said. We wait for what? For me, a woman's voice whispered from the shadows behind. Startled, Eddie spun round. A young woman, maybe 25. Stepped out of the trees. She wore the shadows like a cloak and was unutterably beautiful. Her hair was black and her face was moon-pale and tinged with some of the phosphorescence of that heavenly body. Her lips were crimson and her eyes were like blue pools beneath her black eyebrows. She was stunning, slim with thrusting bosoms and a narrow waist that flared to full hips under her taffeta dress. Meet Selena, Ray said with a mock bow. At least Eddie thought it was a mock bow. But this girl could in fact be royalty, from the air of authority and command that exuded from her. Hi, I'm Eddie, he said. Selena put out her gloved hand. She wore a golden ring with a red stone set in it on her ring finger over the glove, without knowing why he did it. He bent and kissed her ring. She laughed, a sweet tinkling sound that made his spine tingle, and a sweetness like cream soda rose up into his solar plexus. Pleased to meet you, Eddie. Me you too, Selena Ray. Grincy, I told you you'd like her. Everyone does. Selena laughed again. Ray is such a charmer, but not everyone likes me, far from it. Let's go on, Ray said. They set off at a pace, Ray leading Eddie, walking side by side with Selena behind. Eddie ran his hand through his hair, trying to smooth it so. We were doing a vampire hunt, he said. An exorcism, Ray called back. He turned to the young beauty beside him. Hey, do you believe in vampires? Selena, oh yes, I'm sure they exist. But here in Highgate in London, why not? Selena said. Even her velvety voice was seductive. There are lots of reports, Ray called back. Eddie ignored him. He was talking to Selena, really, though, a tall man in a top hat. She shrugged in the moonlight. I don't know about that. Eddie couldn't believe that anyone so beautiful would believe this crap with her. There beside him, it was important he didn't show the sizzle of anxiety that was running through him. Just from being here in the graveyard, Eddie was about to suggest to Selena that maybe they could meet up for a coffee or a smoke the next day when Ray stopped here. He said Eddie hadn't been paying attention to where they were. He turned from Selena and saw massive ornate stonework in front of him. This wasn't a single tomb. It was a mausoleum, and it wasn't a mausoleum for a single family, but some Victorian architect's idea of ancient Egypt. A massive stone rampart stood in front of them. Weeds and trees grew from the top. But the architecture looked ancient Egyptian, like the template Luxor that he'd seen in his dad's National Geographic. A deep shadow-haunted gate led within once there had been a wooden, huge double door, but that now hung broken on one side, and the other half tore off its hinges and pushed open to the tunnel. "Behold the circle of Lebanon," Ray said with a flourish. Eddie's mouth was dry. "We're going in there." He said he heard the quaver in his voice and tried to disguise it. But Selena heard it anyway and laughed softly. She said, "You're not scared, are you?" Eddie, he blushed. "Of course not. It's maybe not safe." It was Ray's turn to laugh. "No, it's not safe. That's why we're going." Eddie cleared his throat to do this. Exorcism, yes." Selena said. "The thing is, I don't believe in vampires," Eddie said. Selena stroked his arm. "Then there's nothing to worry about. But what if the place falls on us? It looks old and crumbly. It won't." "We've been there before," Lennon said. Eddie's mouth went dry and his heart beat faster. He struggled to get his words out, then said, I'm okay, guys. I think I'm gonna miss this." Selena laughed again. "Come on." Eddie Ray coaxed him. "You wouldn't want your friends at the squat thinking you're chickened out." Eddie frowned. No, he wouldn't. There's something strange about this that was so insistent that he'd go. It didn't make sense. Why did they care if he went or not? But then it occurred to him. They were maybe going to murder him. Maybe there were a couple who got weird sexual kicks out of murdering strangers. He stepped back. "No, come on," Ray said, getting angry. "Don't waste my time, Eddie," he said. "You'd come the tomb's just here, just inside and to the right." "That's right," Selena said. "Just inside the circle, just within the gate. Now, sorry. I'm leaving. You won't find your way out on your own." Ray said Eddie's heart was going wild now with the pitter-patter of palpitations. Like butterfly wings, he felt sweat prickle his back. He stepped back. It was true. He'd never find his way out. But at least he wouldn't be here. He stepped back again. He half-turned. He thought of running, then Selena said, "Let him go. You go with him. Show him the way out." He heard the anger in Ray's voice behind him. "If you're sure?" Selena nodded. "Maybe you'll come back tomorrow," she said to Eddie. He swallowed. "Hard, sure, I just wasn't in the mood tonight." Of course, she leaned up and kissed him on the cheek. Her lips were full and soft and chill. "I'll take him to the north gate," when it said, "I'll wait for you here until you come back." Selena said, "Then we'll do our ceremony." Eddie managed to avoid Ray the next 2 days. It was Friday when he bumped into him in the kitchen. "He still looked weird, hey man," Ray said. "Had an attack of the nerves the other night." "No," Eddie said as he buttered some half-burned toast. He had some baked beans on the gas ring bubbling away nicely. "This wasn't my thing funny. You thought you were into it? No." Eddie went to pour the beans on the now buttered toast and sit down at the cluttered table. There was some pepper somewhere. He liked pepper on his baked beans. "Selena liked you," Eddie sat back. "She did, yeah." Eddie remembered that he liked her too. He remembered the soft brush of her lips on his cheek. He grinned. "She was pretty cool. She knows you like her too," Eddie blushed. He hated being obvious, though. He knew he probably often was. "We're going again tonight," Ray said. Eddie went back to eating expertly, slicing a strip of beans and toast. Ray continued. "Selena wondered if you would come along." Eddie shook his head. "Nah, not sure," she said. "If we go earlier, then maybe we go round to her place after another drink and smoke." Eddie looked up. "Now she lives in Highgate." "Yeah, not far. She's got wine," she said. Eddie remembered how pretty she was. "How long does this exorcism thing take?" Ray shrugged. "Not so long. She just likes the occult and things. I'll just do it for her." Eddie laughed. "You ever?" Ray shook. He said. No, I'm not her type." Eddie chewed the soggy toast and swallowed. "Okay, yeah. Well, come along. It's not my thing. But if we're going back to hers," Ray said, "I would come back with you." "But I've got another date, so I can't stay," Smile amused. "So just me and her." Apparently Ray was grinning now. He winked. It was only 10:30 when they scaled the graveyard gate and dropped onto the soft earth of the other side. Eddie hissed, "Where are we meeting Selena?" "I'm here," said a velvety voice just behind his shoulder. "I was waiting for you," Selena, Eddie said. He couldn't help living up to his name, though. He could hardly see her in the gloom. But he recognized the voice. She reached over and ran her hand up and down his bicep. "Let's go," she said. "Then we're going for a drink." "Sure. Ray can't come, Eddie says." "He says so. He told me all the more for us. Then I smoke more than I drink." She smiled in the shadows. "Wine is my poison. The redder the better." Eddie thought of the warmth of the night. You don't need to chill red wine either. "But you've probably got a fridge." "No," she said. "I like it warm." They stood again before the great decayed entrance to the Circle of Lebanon. The moon tonight cast no light. Instead, she hid a face behind clouds, as if afraid of witnessing what was about to happen. The monuments to the dead were wreathed in shadows and weeds. Something moved in the tangled briars to their left. Eddie jumped despite himself. Then, "It laughed," Selena said. "Probably a fox, don't worry, or a rat," Ray said. "A rat." Eddie was a lamp now. He didn't like rats. "Let's go into the Circle of Lebanon," Selena said. Taking Eddie's hand, he felt her gloved fingers twine through his. He had a lump of anxiety in his throat as she pulled him forward into the tunnel that led into the inner circle. He saw the doors of the tombs on each side as they came to the crescent, and away, split going left and going right. Selena led him. "Right, is it far?" he asked. His voice didn't sound. "Right?" Hoped she didn't notice. "Not far," she said. They walked on, stepping over dead branches and fallen masonry. Mice scuttled away, and her foot and baths flitted in the air above. Eddie glanced up even in the darkness of the moonless night. You could see they were in a deep channel of masonry. Tombs seemed piled on top of each other. There were sepulchre doors on both sides, some gaping open. He was afraid still. Selena held his hand and tugged him on. Ray went in front of them, far. "Still?" he asked. "Not far," said Selena, a few more careful paces, stepping over fallen bricks and pieces of rotten wood. Then Ray stopped here, he said. "Yes," Selena said. "This is it." Eddie's voice shook. "Will it take long?" "It's just that." She stroked his arm, calming him like he was a young bull going to the abattoir. "It won't take long," she said soothingly. "And then we'll go for a drink?" he asked her, his voice stammering. She nodded, leaning in, kissing him with her plump, soft lips. On his cheek, he put his hand up to where her lips had touched his skin. He felt an imprint of ice where there should be warmth, Selena whispered. "Then we will drink, yes." Eddie looked at her sapphire blue eyes that seemed almost to give off their own light, and her lips painted in carnadine. She was close, close enough to kiss her breath should be warm against his skin. A gentle sigh of life. But Eddie felt no breath. Ray opened the door of the tomb, then stood. The sense of apprehension grew in Eddie's breast. Ray was waiting for something like the candles, Selena said. Eddie and she waited outside while Ray went into the tomb. Eddie heard the scrape and flare of a match and saw a fluttering flame kindle inside the cold, silent sepulcher, he said. "I'm not sure about this," Selena whispered into his ear. "Don't worry, my love." She was so sensual, so soft, so seductive. He felt her whispers caress him. She stroked his face with her satin fingers. Ray called from inside the tomb. Selena pulled him forward. He half resisted, then gave in. His pulse pounded, his throat tightened. He couldn't swallow. He fought to control his anxiety. He mustn't show his fear. Selena wouldn't hurt him. She was so close to him now. He felt her cold bones against him. They stepped to the door. 4 red candles flickered in the breeze, and shadows danced around the decayed tomb in all the corners. The darkness frolicked and fluttered, as if awaiting a celebration. He could hardly get his words out. He tried to sound normal. "This is an exorcism." They ignored him. Ray looked at Selena. Something was wrong. Eddie looked at her beseechingly. She only smiled. He saw in the tomb there was a single shelf, and on that shelf was a coffin. The coffin looked old. The top of the coffin was removed, but there was no body in it. "I don't get it," Eddie said, relief flooding over him. He almost laughed. "Where's the vampire?" Selena giggled, putting her hand to her mouth to stifle it. Eddie looked at it quizzically, then back at the coffin. There was a small tarnished brass nameplate screwed into the old varnished wood. Smile appeared at it. He couldn't read it from where he stood, and it seemed suddenly important that he read it. He stepped forward. They didn't prevent him. Eddie traced the words of the engraving with the tips of his fingers. To read it better, it said, "Lie the remains of Selena Bell, cursed in life, cursed in death. May the Lord have mercy." Should she rise again? Eddie began to tremble. "I don't like this," he said. He was sweating. He was shaking. He was unbearably cold. "Can we go yours now, Selena?" he said. Selena's crimson lips were half open. Her blue eyes glittered with wicked luminescence. Her teeth were long and white and sharp. Her face was pale as new-fallen snow. "Oh, Eddie," she said, "we already have Hello. That was my story, The Highgate Vampire. And now that is the 3rd of the stories that I've published with vampire in the title. So I think I've already uploaded Dulston Vampire, The Highgate Vampire, and The Croglin Vampire. I may do more stories with that in the title later, but that's all I've got so far to say. Something about the origin of the story, well, you may know something about the history of the so-called true Highgate Vampire, was a great scare in the late 60s and early 70s, that there was, in fact, a vampire living in Highgate in North London. So, Highgate Cemetery, the story doesn't explain. But Highgate Cemetery was one of the great Victorian cemeteries that opened around central London in the mid-Victorian period. Because the old churches in the city had become full and Highgate on its hill, with its great view, was constructed as one of a number of very Gothic Victorian cemeteries, and it was quite prestigious, and there are very many famous people buried there. Even people like George Michael to this day. You have to get special dispensation to be buried in the West Cemetery of Highgate or to the East Cemetery where Karl Marx is. And the West Cemetery, and if I've got those wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct me. What happened was, it made a lot of money. There were these very ornate tombs built, the Circle of Lebanon. And this was like, they were interred there. There were the catacombs. It was a church, anyway. It sort of fell out of favor. And then during the First World War, there were a team of gardeners. A lot of them went away to fight and never came back. And it never really took off, and it fell into disarray, and it was overgrown. And then by the 50s and 60s, it was abandoned, and it was wired up. and nobody went there, and it wasn't used for burials anymore. But it became a haven for wildlife. But it also became a haven for weird people, and it attracted all sorts of odd people. It's a really interesting story. I've got a book called The Highgate Vampire by Sean Manchester. The Bishop Sean Manchester ordained in a obscure Gnostic Christian church. Well, there was a great feud between him and a guy called David Ferrant about the vampire. And it became a great media scandal. There were reputedly people found drained of blood, foxes drained of blood, and all these kind of things. But there was all sorts of bizarre stuff went on, black magic rituals, and all sorts of things in Highgate Cemetery. And the friends of Highgate Cemetery became very wary of anything to do with vampires and the occult. Well, this was during the 1970s. As an aside, when I used to lead ghost tours, I think it was 2004. Music. We had a group of people and we actually visited, and because they were Americans, they couldn't believe how rude the people in Highgate Cemetery were, because basically we were paying to be there. But we mustn't mention, although we're interested in ghosts and things like that. So we had a very interesting historical tour, so I've recounted this story elsewhere. But there was a woman who's a bit like Margaret Thatcher, all pearls and very posh, and she said, "You know, put your cameras down. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, and you mustn't do this, and don't do that." Everybody in America, in the service industries, in retail, is really charming. Whereas in the UK, it's a bit more like Eastern Europe, you know, they almost begrudge you spending your money there, and they couldn't get the head around this anyway. So we took a group round, and the other bizarre thing was the leader of the group had sussed us. He was a bright lad. He was just young as a volunteer, and he was a pure albino. I'm not kidding you now. Just because it's quite unusual, I was at school with a lad who was as well. Imagine we're walking through this wilderness with tombs falling down. Tombs with rumors of vampires and black magic and things like this, and we were the only people in this huge cemetery. It's very easy to get lost there, and the guide kept going. Keep up, don't get lost, don't fall behind. And it was like it really added to the atmosphere, and some of my, tourists were goths, and there was one girl from Boston, I think, who was collecting grave dirt for some kind of nefarious reason. I don't know exactly why. And she was doing this surreptitiously, and the light was failing, okay? And he then referred to the catacombs. Now I've been back since I've been in the catacombs. But he said, even I'm not allowed to go into the catacombs. Only the most senior of the friends. So you immediately get this idea of some kind of secret society, and going back to the story of the Highgate vampire from the 1970s. You can Google all this, not my story, but their story. There was supposed to be some master vampire living in the catacombs. So we're back to our tour. This albino guide was very keen to hurry us out. Before dark came and very, wary about the catacombs and the things in it. And I had a very strange and pleasant feeling around the circle of Lebanon. I'm not psychic. I'm not really prone to these things. But when I used to do the ghost tours, every now and again, I would have weird turns, you know, not very often, but every now and again. So anyway, that is my experience, some of my experience in Highgate Cemetery. The story itself. So it's set in the 1970s because it is completely fictional. It has nothing to do with the reportedly true story of the Highgate vampire. But it's set in the same period because I'm kind of fond of the 70s. Anyway, they do say that when you're older, you still like the music you liked when you're 17. And when I was 17, I was listening to, Hawkwind, who I still listen to, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, all that kind of stuff. Uriah Heep. So I said it in a commune, and my very pleasant, very dopey work-shy hippie guy He's a lamb to the slaughter, really, and I think the albino in the story is based on my guide, really. It's quite tongue-in-cheek. It's not supposed to be scary. I think in this case, you know what's happening. So when you tell a story you can have, and I forget the difference, one suspense anyway. The three kinds. One is where you and the reader and the character know the same amount, yeah. Then there's the bit where the character knows more than the reader. You think of some Agatha Christie, things like this. The Murder of Roger, or what was his name? Somebody will correct me, it'll come to me after I finish doing this, and that is the unreliable narrator. So the narrator's not being totally straight with you, okay. And then in this case, you know more than the main character. My young man is an innocent in many ways, and we totally get what's happening to him and who she is. And he is so naive, and so what I want to create is that horror movie kind of thing where you're saying to the character, no, don't go into the cellar. Why would you go? Don't go with that person. So that's what I wanted to do, and turn it right at the end with that line. Which I still like, you know. When can we go to your place? Yeah. Oh, Eddie, we already have, so that's that. That's the story of the Highgate vampire, you.